Above about 8,000 meters, mountaineers have a name for the environment itself. They call it the death zone, not because of the cold, not because of the cliffs, because of the air. Up there is so little oxygen in every breath that your body is quite literally starving, even while you're breathing as fast and as hard as you possibly can. Your judgment fails first. Then your body starts eating its own tissue just to survive. Stay too long, and even a perfectly fit, well-equipped climber with bottled oxygen and a support team will simply die where they stand. Now take away the oxygen tanks, take away the support team, the weather forecasts, the rescue helicopters, and the ability to just walk back down whenever things go wrong. Imagine instead that this thin, punishing air isn't a mountain summit you visit for a few desperate hours. Imagine it's simply where you live, where you were born, where your parents were born, and their parents before them, for thousands of years. Here's the honest truth. If you took an average person from sea level and simply moved them to live permanently 4 kilometers up, their body would struggle for the rest of their life. Headaches, breathlessness. In many people, thickened blood that puts real strain on the heart for as long as they stayed. At extreme altitude, unacclimatized people can develop fluid building up in the lungs or the brain, a condition that can kill within days. The air itself at high enough elevation is a slow, silent threat. And yet right now, tens of millions of people live permanently at altitudes that would break most of the rest of us. Entire civilizations have thrived for thousands of years on the Tibetan Plateau, in the high Andes, and on the Ethiopian highlands, breathing air with a third less oxygen than the air at sea level, and building rich, full lives at the edge of what a human body should be able to survive. The question is how, and the answer is one of the strangest and most beautiful stories in all of human biology, because it turns out there isn't just one solution. There are at least 3, evolved independently, on 3 different continents by 3 different peoples who never met each other, all solving the exact same impossible problem in completely different ways. Let's start in the Andes, high in South America, home to the Quechua and Aymara peoples. Their solution is the one that probably makes the most obvious sense: more oxygen carriers. Generation after generation at extreme altitude, Andean highlanders evolved blood that runs thicker with oxygen-carrying red blood cells than the blood of people at sea level, and it shows. Studied at the same altitude, Andean highlanders carry noticeably higher hemoglobin levels and higher oxygen saturation in their blood than other high-altitude populations. Simply put, every liter of blood pumping through an Andean highlander's body is packed with more tiny oxygen-carrying vehicles than yours, quietly compensating for air that has so much less to offer in the first place. It is the desperate, brute force solution. If the air won't give you enough oxygen, build a body that can grab hold of every last molecule that is there. Now travel to the Tibetan Plateau, among the highest permanently inhabited land on Earth, and the story flips completely on its head. You would expect the same solution: thicker blood, more red blood cells. Instead, researchers found almost the opposite. Tibetans living at extreme altitude tend to keep their hemoglobin levels close to normal sea level range, avoiding the dangerously thick, sludgy blood that overworks the heart in unacclimatized visitors. Instead of thickening the blood, their bodies breathe faster and deeper at rest, moving more air in and out with every single breath, and route that oxygen through the body with unusual efficiency. It is the opposite strategy entirely. Rather than squeezing more out of the blood, evolution tuned their lungs and their breathing itself. And then there is a third answer, from the highlands of Ethiopia, that might be the strangest of all, because Ethiopian highlanders show something that still genuinely puzzles researchers. Their hemoglobin levels sit close to sea level normal, much like the Tibetans, and yet their blood oxygen saturation also stays remarkably high, closer to what you would expect from someone standing comfortably at sea level. Somehow, without obviously thickening their blood, and without the same breathing adaptations found on the Tibetan Plateau, their bodies simply cope. Exactly how remains one of the more open questions in all of human physiology today. An entire population quietly thriving through a mechanism science still hasn't fully mapped out. 3 peoples, 3 continents, the exact same brutal problem, thin, oxygen-starved air, and 3 completely different biological answers, each one arrived at through nothing but generations of survival and death at the edge of human tolerance. Genius, every one of them. But there is one more twist to the Tibetan story, and it is so strange it barely sounds real. Part of the answer may not even be entirely human. Buried in the DNA of Tibetans today is a very specific, very unusual version of a gene called EPAS1, one of the master switches that controls how the body responds to low oxygen. Geneticists studying that gene found something they did not expect. Its exact sequence barely resembles the version found in nearby populations. Instead, it closely matches DNA recovered from Denisovans, an extinct relative of ours, known mostly from from a handful of bone fragments found in a cave in Siberia. At some point, tens of thousands of years ago, ancient humans and Denisovans interbred, and a piece of Denisovan DNA, quietly carrying the secret to breathing safely on the roof of the world, was passed down and preserved in Tibetan populations ever since. A species that no longer exists on Earth may have handed modern humans one of the keys to surviving on some of the most oxygen-starved ground on the planet. It is still being studied, and there is more to learn about exactly how it works. But sit with what it suggests for just a moment, that somewhere in our deep past, humans and another kind of human crossed paths, and something passed between them that still lives on, quietly in the lungs and blood of people breathing thin mountain air today. So let's put it all together and really see what your ancestors were up against, and what they actually did about it. They faced air itself turned into an enemy. Air so thin, it can fill the lungs with fluid, swell the brain, and starve the body of oxygen, even while breathing as hard as possible. A stress that should, by every rule of nature, have kept humans confined to the lowlands, leaving the highest places on Earth permanently empty of us. And instead, we colonized them. In the Andes, we built thicker, richer blood to carry more oxygen in every heartbeat. On the Tibetan plateau, we rewired our breathing itself, and quietly borrowed a genetic solution from an entirely different, long-extinct branch of humanity. In the Ethiopian highlands, we found a third way that scientists are still working to fully understand. 3 different answers to a problem that should have had none. Every single generation, in every one of those places for thousands of years, was a test that could have ended the story of people living there. And every time they passed it, they stood at altitudes where the air itself works against you, and they simply refused to leave. You will feel a little short of breath hiking up a single flight of stairs at altitude on vacation. You'll take a photo, catch your breath, and head back down to easier air within the day. They built entire lives, entire civilizations, in air that could quietly kill an unprepared visitor within a week. And the fact that they didn't just survive there, but thrived there, generation after generation, on 3 separate continents, in 3 completely different ways, is one of the clearest proofs we have that this species does not quit when the environment turns hostile.